correction is not limited only to multifocality, depth field, or monovision. We will see that presbycular treatment allows the reactivation of residual accommodation by improving retinal image and stimulating cerebral plasticity. I will present it with my colleague. As you say, Angel decoration surgery for 8 years for me, and I've tried different techniques using the latest laser technology and device. And when in 2007 I find the treatment guided by asphericity, OCAS, I was operated too, so 10 years ago, and it was a very good experience for me. So I was a metrop and only 1.5 diopters when I was operated 10 years ago for presbyopia. At this time, we noticed an improvement in accommodation from 1 to 3 diopters and an improvement in visual quality too. So now it's stable too. It's stable too, and 10 years after we have the same improvement of accommodation. So we have no myopia. I have no myopia. I have no monovision like my patient. So what made near vision work? Brain plasticity, accommodation, or other thing. I want to try to speak with you, but in the literature, what do we know about brain plasticity? Even when a visual defect is perfectly corrected, it's the brain that determines our visual acuity. It's a ROSA. Studies have shown that vision can be restored even in patients born blind or that have been blind for a long time, Bernski, and the brain can adapt beyond the critical growth period, Kamarkar, and the studies now in myopic patients treated by refractive surgery shows change in plasticity in the primary visual cortex. So, about accommodation stimuli, what do we know? About different factors, we know that retinal blur is the most important, image disparity too, and we will study it. Don't worry, I don't explain all the chart, but what are the principles of accommodation in binocular vision? Accommodation, convergence, and meiosis are linked, as well as the compensation of internal and corneal aberration. At first, visual acuity was the goal, without monovision and good stereoscopic vision. Then we try the improvement in visual quality, and in the future, I hope, we could be targeting visual performance, and we will see how. The goal of presbycular or other treatment is to recreate the physiological principle without monovision, which consists of compensating spherical aberration during accommodation as in the young patient. Here you see the positive corneal spherical aberration. This is the crystalline lens. And during accommodation, we have a compensation of the spherical aberration. And we will see here the deformation of the crystalline lens, like minus 50. So we try to do the same with the laser. In presbyopia, due to the flattening of the cornea, we have an increase in spherical corneal aberration. Everybody knows that. And of course, a decrease in negative aberration due to the rigidity lens. Reminder, asphericity, everybody knows, is defined as the curvature of the sphere. It describes the shape of the cornea, prolat or oblate, and not effect on the optical power. So average asphericity is only minus 0.26. Asphericity is a specific treatment, and we know that the ablation depth is greater in the median periphery and more progressive versus the other treatment. If we increase in negative corneal asphericity, we decrease in positive corneal spherical aberration, as you can see here. So -1, and you decrease the corneal spherical aberration. Everybody knows that. When we speak about depth field, the average value of depth field as reported as 0.30 diopters. Damalcaz in France is only 0.60 diopters. It's insufficient for near vision, or better. It would be better with new accommodation, and I want to speak about that now. So presbyopia, corneal spherical aberration, become more positive with age. PSF is worse, and this inhibit brain perception and the accommodative reflex. You can see the PSF, and nobody can see with that. If we have a presbycore or the treatment that creates hyperpolarization, we reduce positive corneal spherical aberration and spherical blur, and for an improvement in brain perception and accommodation again. So something is really critical, but you will see after. So the pre-op exam is important to determine residual accommodation, corneal aberration, and asphericity, and to detect the presence of cataract. I can say that Alcon diffractive array can be implanted after refractive surgery, but it's important to know here how we have residual accommodation, because if we have a good residual accommodation, we can operate a very young patient, because I know it will be a very good result. So our treatment is one-shot treatment and stability in time. The pre-op calculation take into account the over or under-correcting shift created by the custom Q software, pre-op keratometry, pre-op asphericity, pre-op residual accommodation, and we will see in our result the accommodation with OCAS, the accommodation with I3C, and the contribution after with the neural plasticity mechanism. Is here the presbycore software calculate the correct value with the target asphericity, most of time minus 0.80 for the Alcon custom Q software. Our study conducted on 100 patients. It was a bilateral surgery without monovision, with an average accommodation of 0.60 diopters. The first proof with OCAS is an accommodation improved from 0.69 dioptry in pre-op to 2 dioptry in post-op. You can see this curve. The post-op result for accommodation was calculated with OCAS dynamic accommodation with a reading chart. It's better with that. And the accommodation post-presbycore was calculated also using difference in diopter needed between near vision and far vision. It's what we call optical amplitude range. The second proof is very interesting too with a barometer I3C, because we see a compensation of internal and corneal spherical aberration with a change of difference after 1 month. After 1 month, in change of difference in lens aberration in relationship with new accommodation. With new accommodation, because we find again this chart we see on the physiological young model, and without, of course, no touching of crystalline lens accommodation. So the second point is very important too, because we see the change of direction of internal. So is presbyopia eye physiology related? It's only due only to eye or to brain aging. We have seen the reactivation of residual accommodation post-presbycore treatment with dynamic OCAS, with a change in direction of internal spherical aberration. Thus, the changing of corneal asphericity allows for the stimulation of cerebral plasticity and the strengthening of connections that could improve visual performance. I think so, and it's why we are working with, and I work that in front, but it's not with the finger that we play, but it's with the brain. And I think it's not with eye we see, but with it is brain. And now I let my friends to speak about brain plasticity.
Great, so thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And
continuing the same talk. So as a visual neuroscientist, this is something that we've known for a very long time. That it's not, and this might seem weird to say at an ophthalmology conference, but it's true nonetheless that it's not, where's my talk? Can you put it back, please? It's not your eyes that see, it's the brain that sees. Do I have to do something, or? Okay, great, thank you. Right, so it's your brain that sees, it's not your eyes, and there's a multitude of visual illusions that account for this fact. As a visual neuroscientist, I've been working with people who were born blind. and we look at the massive cortical changes that occur in the brain in someone who's born blind. You know, it's almost 35% of the brain that's purely visual. So it's massive changes that occur in the brain of someone who's blind. This?
Alcon.
Yes?
Attends, viens. Okay.
Sorry. No, it still doesn't work.
Is that a USB still in there?
Ah, non, il marche pas ici.
Yeah, it's working here, but not up there.
Okay.
Terribly sorry about this.
Okay, I see. This is the reason.
Thank you kindly.
Please try it again.
Oh, thank you. Great. So, right. As a visual neuroscientist, we know that it's the brain that sees, it's not your eyes. And we have several tools that we use to investigate these changes, these massive cortical changes. And now we're looking for some much more subtle changes in the brain. So you know these tools, some of the tools that we use, we'll be using ophthalmological tests, we'll be looking for the betterment of visual performance. And the tools that we use as neuroscientists are T1 and 2 brain scans, functional imagery, and DTI. So without getting into too much detail or divulging all of the details of the study we've decided to undertake, I'd like to explain a little bit about what we're going to do. So we'd like to understand what are these changes that accompany the betterment of visual performance. So we'll be performing ophthalmological tests before the operation, and scanning our participants before, and then performing these tests again afterward the operation, so that we can compare before and after. And then again, a year later, as I've been listening to your presentations, I've understood that these changes last a very long time, so we expect to see the same changes to follow up even a year later. So we'll be performing fMRI scans, and so that we can see the changes that accompany the betterment of visual performance. So this is the timeline that is guiding our procedures. So is there a laser on this? Right, of course there's a laser. We'll be scanning our participants before the operation, and then again immediately after the operation, and then again a year later to see what kind of changes accompany the betterment of visual function. We'll be using T1 and T2 brain scans, which basically are anatomical brain scans. It's images of the brain that enable us to measure volumetry and thickness. And we know that in someone who's born blind, for an example, there's degeneration of the thickness and the volume of these visual areas in the brain. So this is something that we expect to see. And we know that in other studies where there was removal of cataracts in people who were born blind, we also can observe changes in volume and in thickness of the brain in the white and gray matter. We'll be using tests such as Visiotopia to be able to map the visual field on the visual cortex. We expect to see changes in V1. Not just V1, but in one of those places. We'll be able to map the visual field on the visual cortex. We'll also be using depth field so that we can test for functional changes in the brain as well. How does the brain react to accommodation and these depth of view? So we will be looking at that before and after the refractive surgery. And we'll be using a technique called DTI, which enables us to track the fibers, the connectivity between different visual areas. So this is done in order to be able to see how different brain areas communicate with one another. And we expect that there'll be changes in the connectivity between these different areas as well. So what you can see here, what looks like these little hairs are actually fibers that connect different cortical areas. And we can visualize those by use of these techniques. So vision is not just the eye. And here we see an image of all the visual areas, the different visual areas that deal with vision beyond the retina and that are changed by visual performance. Thank you. So if you have any questions about our techniques or about some of the work that we've done, I've prepared some slides to answer those questions as well.
Very good. I apologize if you can stay a little longer. We're going to have a little discussion after the presentations.
Thank you.
So, thanks again, thanks Charles for the very interesting topic.